I never imagined that a simple lunch invitation would change the way I looked at my family forever. My name is Rachel. I'm 34 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that hard work solved everything. I built a successful real estate business from nothing, survived a painful divorce, and raised my son Ethan mostly on my own. He was my world. So when Ethan called me one Tuesday evening and excitedly told me that he and his wife, Madison, had finally found their dream home, I felt proud beyond words. "Mom, it's perfect," he said. "Big backyard, quiet neighborhood, everything we've wanted." I smiled as I listened. "What about the down payment?" I asked. There was a brief silence. "We're still short," Ethan admitted, "but we'll figure it out." What he didn't know was that I had already made a decision. For years, I had invested carefully and saved money specifically for his future. The account had grown to nearly $900,000. I planned to surprise him. I wanted my son to live the life I never had. 3 days later, Madison invited me to lunch. The timing seemed perfect. I slipped the cashier's check into my purse before leaving the house, already imagining Ethan's reaction when I handed it to him. The restaurant was crowded when I arrived. Madison texted that she was running 15 minutes late. No problem. I found a quiet table near the back and ordered coffee while I waited. That's when everything started. A woman sat down in the booth behind me. A few seconds later, a man joined her. At first, I paid no attention. Then I heard a voice, Madison's voice. I froze. She wasn't supposed to be there yet. I turned slightly but couldn't see her face. Then the man laughed. $900,000? He said, "You're serious?" My heart skipped. Madison laughed too. "Oh, she's definitely giving it to Ethan." The coffee cup nearly slipped from my hand. The man lowered his voice. "And after you get the house?" Madison answered without hesitation. "After that, Ethan won't matter anymore." I stopped breathing. For a moment, I honestly thought I had heard wrong. But then she said something that made my blood run cold, something that proved this wasn't just about money. And the second I heard those words, I knew my son's entire life was built on a lie. I sat perfectly still, afraid that even the sound of my breathing would give me away. Behind me, Madison continued talking as if she were discussing the weather. "I've spent 4 years playing the perfect wife," she said with a laugh. "You have no idea how exhausting that gets." The man chuckled. "But it'll be worth it once the house is in your name." My stomach twisted. House in your name? Ethan had always believed they were building a future together. He worked long hours, skipped vacations, and sacrificed constantly to give Madison everything she wanted. And she was sitting there talking about him like he was a stepping stone. Then came the sentence that shattered whatever doubt I still had. "Once the money clears, Ethan's getting divorce papers." I nearly dropped my purse. The stranger laughed. "And he'll never know about us?" Madison's answer came immediately. "Of course not. He's too trusting." The room suddenly felt smaller, hotter. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This woman wasn't just planning to leave my son. She was planning to use him first. For several seconds, I considered storming over to their table. I wanted to expose her right there. I wanted to scream. But years in business had taught me something important. Emotional reactions create mistakes. Information creates victories. So I stayed quiet. A few minutes later, Madison stood up. "I should go," she said. "My mother-in-law thinks I'm meeting her for lunch." The two of them laughed. I felt physically sick. When they walked out of the restaurant together, I waited another minute before following. Outside, I watched from a distance. The stranger kissed her. Not a quick goodbye kiss. Not something that could be misunderstood. A long, intimate kiss between two people who clearly belonged together. I immediately pulled out my phone and took several photos. For the first time that afternoon, I felt something stronger than shock. Anger. Not for myself. For Ethan, the little boy I had raised. The young man who still called me every Sunday. The son who genuinely loved his wife. He had no idea the person sleeping beside him was planning to destroy him. As I drove home, the cashier's check sitting in my purse felt heavier than ever. $900,000. Just hours earlier, I had planned to hand it over with a smile. Now I stared at it sitting on my kitchen table. Then I made a decision. Madison thought she was smarter than everyone else. She thought she had already won. What she didn't know was that I wasn't going to warn her. I wasn't even going to confront her. Instead, I was going to give her exactly what she wanted. And then I was going to take everything away, For the next 2 weeks, I acted like nothing had happened. I smiled when Madison called. I asked about the house. I even complimented the paint colors she had chosen. The entire time, she thought I was the easiest person in the world to fool. Meanwhile, I was quietly preparing. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator. I needed proof. Not suspicions, not assumptions. Proof. Within days, the reports started arriving. Every page made my heart sink. Madison hadn't just been seeing one man. She had been involved with him for nearly 3 years. There were hotel receipts, photographs, text messages, and financial records. Even worse, the investigator discovered that the stranger's name was Derek, and he was deeply involved in Madison's plan. They had already discussed selling the future house and splitting the profits. After the divorce, reading those messages made me physically ill. Ethan wasn't a husband to her. He was an investment, a target, a source of money. But the final piece of evidence shocked me the most. Madison had been secretly encouraging Ethan to put every major asset into joint ownership. The house, savings, investments, everything. She wasn't planning to leave with a broken heart. She was planning to leave with half of his future. The more I learned, the calmer I became. Not because I wasn't hurt, because I finally understood exactly who I was dealing with. A predator, and predators only succeed when nobody sees them coming. 1 week later, Ethan excitedly invited me to dinner. "Mom," he said, grinning from ear to ear. The seller accepted our offer. Madison squeezed his hand dramatically. "Oh my God, we're finally getting our dream home." I forced a smile. "That's wonderful." The entire dinner, they talked about floor plans, furniture, and moving dates. Madison looked happier than I had ever seen her. Of course she did. She believed the $900,000 was coming. She believed her future was secure. What she didn't know was that I had already changed everything. After dessert, Ethan finally asked the question. "Mom, you mentioned having a surprise for us?" I saw excitement flash across Madison's face. For a split second, she couldn't even hide it. I reached into my purse. Her eyes immediately locked onto the envelope. The room became silent. Ethan smiled. Madison practically stopped breathing. Slowly, I placed the envelope on the table. Then I looked directly at my daughter-in-law. And for the first time since that day in the restaurant, I watched genuine fear appear in her eyes, because she suddenly realized that I knew something. And what happened next was about to destroy the life she thought she had already won. The restaurant suddenly felt silent. Madison stared at the envelope sitting on the table. Her smile had disappeared. Ethan looked confused. "Mom?" he asked. "What's going on?" I took a slow breath. Then I slid the envelope across the table. Madison reached for it first. Inside wasn't a cashier's check. It was a stack of photographs. The color drained from her face instantly. One by one, the pictures showed her kissing Derek outside restaurants, hotels, and apartment buildings. Ethan's smile vanished. "What is this?" he whispered. Madison looked like she couldn't breathe. I wasn't finished. I placed another folder on the table. Inside were copies of the investigators' reports, hotel records, messages, and financial documents. Every lie, every secret meeting, every plan, documented, verified, impossible to deny. Ethan flipped through the pages in stunned silence. Then he stopped at a printed text message, one I would never forget. "Once we get the house and her money, I'll leave him." His hand started shaking. "Tell me this isn't real," he said quietly. Madison opened her mouth. Nothing came out. "Tell me," Ethan shouted. People around us turned to look. Tears suddenly filled Madison's eyes, but I wasn't buying them. Not anymore. "Ethan," she stammered, "I can explain." "No," he said. The pain in his voice broke my heart. "No, you can't." For the first time, Madison realized her plan was collapsing. She looked at me. "You set me up." I stared directly back at her. "No, you did that yourself." A few moments later, Ethan stood up and walked out. Madison chased after him, crying his name. But he never turned around. That night, my son stayed at my house. Neither of us slept much. The next morning, he told me he was filing for divorce. 3 months later, everything was finalized. Because of the evidence, Madison walked away with far less than she expected. The dream house was never purchased. The $900,000 never left my account. And Derek? The moment the money disappeared, he disappeared too. Apparently, True love wasn't so strong without a nearly $1 million reward attached to it. The last thing I heard was that Madison tried contacting Ethan dozens of times. He ignored every message, every call, every excuse. As for my son, he slowly rebuilt his life. It wasn't easy. Betrayal never is. But he healed. And a year later, I finally gave him something far more valuable than a dream house. I helped him start his own business, a future nobody could steal from him. Looking back, I sometimes think about how close I came to handing over that $900,000. One conversation, one overheard secret, one moment of truth. That's all it took. Madison thought she was using my son to build her perfect future. Instead, her greed destroyed her own. And the money she spent years chasing, she never got a single dollar of it.